All right, folks, I need you all to stop what you're doing and listen up. You know I love this time of year. The NBA is in full swing. And with all this action going on, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you take advantage of it all. That's why we've partnered with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use promo code SAS and download the app now. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today, I'll give you my picks on tonight's matchup between the NBA's Phoenix Suns and the Sacramento Kings. So let's get right to it. First up, will Kevin Durant, KD, Trey score more or less than 25.5 points for the Phoenix Suns? I'm going to go with more because he's KD. It's that simple. One of the greatest pure scorers the game has ever seen, approaching the age of 37, and a brother still averaging 27 a game. This is who he is and what he does. Ain't going to be hard for him to score 20, more points than 26.5, especially considering, or 25.5 rather, especially consider what I saw from Sacramento just the other night against Golden State. Next up, will Devin Booker score more or less than 26.5 points? I'm going to go with more with him too because he's a pure scorer and because he's going up against the Sacramento Kings. It just seemed under the leadership of Doug Christie, who I like a lot and I am rooting for, they just seem at times to be going through the motions. Yeah, they can score, but inexplicably, they get their ass kicked from time to time. I don't understand why. I really don't get it, but it just happens, and especially on the defensive side of the floor. No doubt about that. So I'm definitely going with more for Devin Booker in this category. Next up, will the Sacramento Kings' DeMar DeRozan score more or less than 22.5 points? Mr. Mid-Range himself, DeMar DeRozan, I believe he will because I haven't been that impressed with Phoenix, obviously. They just find ways to cause themselves trouble. They should be a lot better than what they are. It makes no sense whatsoever why they're not that way. You just have to look at them right now, whether it's Beal and Devin Booker, and that combination doesn't work, whether it's Budenholzer being a coach, and that's not working, whether they're devoid of leadership, which is things that we've all speculated about. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but I do know this. It ain't hard to score more than 22.5 points on them if you can play. And DeMar DeRozan can ball. And finally, will the Sacramento Kings, Zach LaVine, score more or less than 21.5 points? Yes, the answer is more to this. Same damn reasons I just gave you to say more about DeMar DeRozan. It's that simple. So look at what I'm talking about here, okay? KD, Devin Booker, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, more, and more. That's what we like to say anytime we're talking about Prize Picks because we're alluding to more, as in more money in your pocket. There's turmoil in Big D between a former player and the star of the team. We got to get into that. Plus, the greatest shooter God has ever created reached another milestone last night. We'll talk about that as well. But not before we get into the border czar himself. There's a bully emanating out of the 8 nations capital, not just in D.C., but from city to city and state to state around this country. He has made it very, very clear he ain't beyond arresting and prosecuting. Not that he can, but prosecuting elected officials, law enforcement officials, and everybody in between. He ain't playing. And he's coming on this show to tell me why. Mr. Tom Homan himself, the border czar, under the Donald Trump administration, in the house right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Ooh, let's roll. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do at the very least 3 times a week over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. As always, before I get into the show, I like to pause just for a second to pay homage to my followers and my subscribers and listeners on iHeartRadio, for example. There's been millions of downloads over the last few months, courtesy of iHeartRadio. Can't thank them for the love and support enough. And, of course, over the digital airways of YouTube, we've now eclipsed over 1.12 million subscribers, really over 1.13 million subscribers. So thank y'all for the love and support enough to keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming. To continue to like and follow the show, just click the bell to get notified for all of our newest content, and you too shall consider yourself the latest member of the Stephen A. Smith Show family. And while you're doing that, make sure to pick up a copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, now in paperback. Just go to straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Once again, that's straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. I'm told it's very inspirational and aspirational. So those are not my words. Those are the words of others. They didn't write the book. They didn't do the audio for the book. That would be me. It's not their book. It's mine. So the fact that they objectively stated those words in affirmation of what I was trying to accomplish is deeply appreciated. Thank you so much. Go to straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Let's get right into the show, please, before we get to Mr. Tom Homan. Let's get started with the NFL. And the beef going on now between former Cowboy teammates DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. Lawrence, who spent the last 11 seasons in Dallas, recently signed a free agent deal this week with the Seattle Seahawks. Yesterday, the defensive end spoke to a blogger who covers the Seahawks, and here's what Lawrence had to say about the Dallas Cowboys. Take a listen to this, please.
You know, Dallas is my home. I made my home there. You know, my family lives there. You know, I'm forever going to be there, but, you know, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
We're here. DeMarcus Lawrence, welcome to the Seahawks. Thanks for joining us.
Damn. Let's be very, very clear about DeMarcus Lawrence here, okay? The brother didn't even have a chance to pass gas before he was talking about his old team. I mean, he literally, it was the equivalent of just getting out the damn bathroom before this brother opens his mouth and is talking smack about the Dallas Cowboys, his former team. Having said that, he didn't lie. Because we know there's a snowball's chance in hell the Dallas Cowboys are going to Super Bowl. It's 30 years and counting, just in case y'all didn't remember. You know, I mean, I'm looking at the Cowboy fans right now watching me. You know I'm laughing at you. You know I'm laughing at you, right? You know we're going to win the Super Bowl next year, right? You know we're going to win the Super Bowl next year, right? Nah. 30 years and counting. And what I peeled from that, stay tuned. I'm not going to tell you what I peeled from his words specifically until I get a little bit further into this. Because that full interview, by the way, can be found at youtube.com/@HawkBlogger, okay? Anyway, those words didn't sit well with his former teammate, Micah Parsons, who wrote this on X, quote, "This is what rejection and envy look like. This some clown shit," end quote. Now, Lawrence apparently saw the post on X, and he had his own retort directly to Micah Parsons. Quote, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left," end quote. Okay, DeMarcus Lawrence is a good comeback. Since Micah Parsons clapped at you, you had every right to clap back at him. You had me, you know how they said in Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello. You had me at hello. Remember that? Well, you had me until that last line. You saying, hey, maybe you spent more time tweeting, less time tweeting and more time winning, I may not have left. We're not sure the Cowboys wanted to keep you. Last time you had double-digit sacks was 6 years ago. You had 25 sacks. You had 10.5 sacks in 2018, and I believe 14.5 sacks in 2017. That's 25 of your 61.5 sacks in 11 years. That means the other 9 years, you had a grand total of 36.5, which averages out to about 4 a season. You see what I'm saying? I'm just using math. So I want you to be careful about that. See, Cowboys cornerback Trevon Diggs writes, "Wow, can't go to war with somebody who really be hating on you." That's not true. Trevon Diggs, you can't go to war with somebody who doesn't believe in you. That's the real statement there. Y'all had a teammate that knew y'all weren't going to the Super Bowl. Y'all had a teammate that knew what Stephen A. had been saying for 30 years. Y'all had a teammate that let y'all know we really ain't shit. That's Cowboys. Now, I don't mean it in its literal terms. It's the National Football League. You had back-to-back 12-win seasons. Y'all were knocking on the door in a lot of people's eyes. You had the Cowboy faithful up there saying, yo, we going to the Super Bowl. You know we're going to the Super Bowl next year, right? You know we're going to the Super Bowl next year, right? And you had credible reasons to believe that until the playoffs arrived and y'all nosedived. You see, when you see these photos of Cowboy fans, the most delusional, disgusting, nauseating fan base in American history, okay, which is I customarily say, it's all in fun. It's all love because I'm just trolling y'all. I'm just trolling y'all like y'all troll me. You know what I'm saying? Because I love how y'all get your hopes up. See, last year, the joy departed from me. I have to admit, I was sad. See, I don't want the Cowboys to suck. I want the Cowboys to be good because I want your hopes to get up. See, I don't want you falling off a curb if you're a Cowboy fan. I want you falling off the roof. Splow! That's what I want. Because there's nothing more nauseating to me than a Cowboy fan. You know we're going to the Super Bowl next year, right? You know we're going to the Super Bowl next year, right? Even when y'all go 3-13 or now 3-14, this is who y'all are. Y'all pass gas and y'all will tell somebody it's perfume. You spit in somebody's face, you'll tell them it's raining. It's what you do. It's who you are. And you got away with it all these years because you got that man Jerry Jones right there, my buddy, my Libra buddy right there. And you got that man Jerry Jones right there making billions, making sure y'all splattered all over those headlines, making sure that you the number one sports brand in the world, if at the very least America, worth over $11 billion. That Jerry Jones right there. He loved the headlines. The untold story in all of this is that evidently y'all do too, at least some of y'all. Because you see, if you had those players in that locker room, right, who didn't believe that you was going to win the Super Bowl, well, then why the hell you stay? Could it be the perks? Could it be the attention, the allure? Could it be the fact that y'all the number one brand and the camera gravitates to y'all and it's a marketing tool that's unrivaled? Being a Dallas Cowboy, could that be the reason? Sounds like it to me. That's what I took from it. Made me think about Dak Prescott, too. You know, that $60 million a year quarterback? Even after Josh Allen just signed for 6 years and $330 million, that averages out to $55 million. Dak Prescott, on an annual salary, is still the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, even though Josh Allen has been to 2 AFC championship games. Dak Prescott ain't won more than 2 playoff games in 10 years. But he's the highest paid quarterback. Is he there because of the sizzle? I'm just asking. I'm not sure. I just think it's a legitimate question to ask. All I'm saying is this. DeMarcus Lawrence. I don't blame Micah Parsons for clapping back at him because it was a shot at the Cowboys, even though he didn't mention him by name in a previous tweet, but then came back at him, or in an interview with the blogger, he didn't mention him by name, but then came back at him with the tweet. My point is that I don't blame Micah Parsons for coming to the defense of his teammates and his organization because he's trying to re-up there and he wants people to know that he believes they're going to win. He doesn't believe they suck. He doesn't believe that they're going to be as bad as they were last year, and I get that. I side with Micah Parsons on that. But to me, that ain't the biggest deal here. The biggest deal here is that DeMarcus Lawrence, he ain't going to Baltimore or Kansas City or Buffalo or the Philadelphia Eagles or even the Detroit Lions or the Green Bay Packers. This brother's going to Seattle. Tyler Lockett's going. DK Metcalf is going. Geno Smith is going. He's going to Seattle. And was saying, yo, might as well be here because it wasn't like we was going to win the Super Bowl there. Damn. That had to hurt. But maybe it'll be incentive for the Dallas Cowboys to look at themselves. Jerry Jones ranking 30th in the NFL this offseason in free agent spending at $22.2 million. Only the Ravens and the Eagles have spent less, and that's only because they don't need to. Got Rico Dowdle, undrafted, free agent running back, became the first undrafted player in Cowboys history to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season. And this brother got to go to Carolina on a 1-year, $6 million deal because the Cowboys didn't have the money to give to him. Instead, they signed Javonte Williams from the Denver Broncos to a 1-year, $3 million deal. Jerry Jones cutting corners. They ain't really spending, which means they ain't going to really win, which means more of what we saw last year is likely. that would give DeMarcus Lawrence an additional dose of credibility with what he was saying. But it would also be something that rightfully agitated Micah Parsons, who's about to re-up with a long-term extension and is hell-bent on letting everybody know we ain't going down like that. I like the subject personally. Micah Parsons is my man, mad love for him. DeMarcus Lawrence, mad respect for him. You Cowboy fans out there who are miserable and a bit perplexed, scratching your head like you got dandruff because you're so upset over the kind of back and forth that we're hearing right now and feeling miserable right now. I'm sorry for your feelings. I'm laughing because you know why I'm laughing. Because I know what's coming come September and October and November and December. We don't need to mention January. Oh, I forgot. You got a new coach too. What's his name again? Brian Schottenheimer? Is that what the name is? Yeah, I forgot. Y'all in for long season. And you already let me know. I'll be ready for it. Will you? Howdy, y'all. How do you do? I'll see you in the weeks and the months to come. Trust me. Coming up, he's a generational talent and the greatest shooter God has ever created. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Steph Curry, hit a milestone of 4,000 three-pointers made last night. We'll get into his legacy, where it is, where it stands, where it should be, and then some. All of that straight ahead. But first, he's a native New Yorker, a former police officer, and the current border czar under the Trump administration. I'm talking to the man himself, Mr. Tom Homan. He's up here next, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Don't go away. All right, everybody, listen up. With all the big-time sports action that's happening each and every day, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you are taking advantage of it all. That's why we've partnered with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is really easy to use. To make a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats. Choose from any of your favorite players, Luka Doncic, Jimmy Butler, and Zach LaVine, all in the same entry. Then sit back and watch. The list is absolutely endless. You can play Prize Picks in over 40 states, including California and Texas. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50. Just use promo code SAS and download Prize Picks right now. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. What's up, everybody? Stephen A. Smith here. Recently, we made news because the great Bill O'Reilly announced a tour that's coming nearest to you in the very, very near future. Get your tickets now for this. It's called 3 Americans, live March 30th at Live Nation's Flag Star at the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. Don't miss the very first show as myself, Chris Cuomo, and yes, that man, Bill O'Reilly, take our different ideas, our different backgrounds, our different beliefs across the country to demonstrate that respectful, meaningful, and even fun conversation. Those are the things that make America as great as it should be. The show will be spirited, unscripted, and all 3 of us will let it fly as we discuss the topics everyone is thinking about these days. There'll also be questions from the audience. We're not running. Tickets are officially on sale now with pre-sale code USA at 3americanslive.com. VIP packages are available with the opportunity to meet and take photos with myself and both those fellas. That's 3 Americans. Live March 30th at the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. Additional dates and cities to be announced. Don't miss it. Trust me, you'll get a kick out of it. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. My next guest has spent more than 4 decades monitoring America's border. He joined the United States Border Patrol in 1984. In 2013, he was appointed by then President Barack Obama as Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Executive Associate Director. He was charged with enforcement and removal operations under that administration. Then in 2017, he was appointed as the acting director of ICE by then President Donald Trump. However, he subsequently retired from the position in 2018. Now he's back with President Trump in this new administration as the border czar. Please welcome to the Stephen A. Smith Show, Mr. Tom Homan. Mr. Homan, how are you, sir? How's everything?
I'm doing great.
For being on the show. Let's get right to it. I wanted to remind our audience that you served under President Obama. He tapped you to lead the Immigration and Customs Enforcement's deportation branch in 2013. How does your role differ now between the Obama and the Trump administrations? How does it differ from what it was then to what it is now?
Well, look, under President Obama, I was the head of enforcement removal operations. When I was there, we oversaw the removal of just shy of 3 million illegal aliens. Now I'm the border czar under President Trump. I have a direct report to the president here. So I overlook what the president assigned me on this new role. I oversee border operations. I got 3 goals: secure the borders, run a deportation operation, a massive deportation operation, and third, find missing children that were smuggled into the country. And the last administration lost track of them. We need to find these children because many of them will be in harm's way. Many aren't, but we need to find these children, make sure they're safe.
I mentioned that Donald Trump had appointed you as acting director of ICE in 2017, but you retired in 2018. What happened then, and why are you back now? Because you stepped away, but obviously you came back. You served over 30 years. I mean, you've given your service and what have you, and you could have retired and went out into the sunset, but you came back. Why did you feel compelled to do so? So please share that with my audience.
Well, it's the second time I came back out of retirement for President Trump. Didn't make my wife real happy, but how do you not come back? I mean, under the last 4 years, I wake up every day upset over the last 4 years because we had the most secure border in my lifetime. And I've done this since, as you said, 1984. It's the most secure border in my lifetime. The numbers proved it. And what the last administration did when they opened the border up, I knew every day when I woke up, more women and children are being sex trafficked across an open border. More Americans would die from fentanyl overdoses, poisonings because of an open border. Sex trafficking in women and children would increase on an open border. And more no-inspected terrorists and people on the watch list would get into the country through an open border. So, I was insulted that President Biden took the most secure border in my lifetime and unsecured it on purpose. And I mean that. Look, I worked for 6 presidents starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I worked for, including Obama and Clinton, took steps to secure the border because they clearly understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. President Biden is the first president in history of this nation who came in unsecured the border. So it upset me because I knew every day someone's going to die crossing that border. Women are going to be sexually assaulted crossing that border. So when President Trump called me, he asked me if I'd want to come back and help fix that border. I didn't hesitate. I came back because I think it's the right thing to do.
You've worked, obviously, doing what you've done. It spanned decades. So obviously, one could easily surmise you have a lot of intel. You have a lot of access to information that the average American citizen may not know or what have you. Let me ask you this, and I don't mean to ask it politically, but I'm asking it this way. Have you received any kind of explanation as to why former President Biden literally went against what former President Barack Obama did during his presidency? And the numbers show he actually deported more immigrants out of this country than Trump did. Yet Biden comes into office in 2020 and he went completely against what Obama had done. You ever received intel explanation as to why he did that?
That's a great question. You're the first ones to ask me that question, right? Now I surmise, I have an opinion that I think this administration thought these millions of people are going to be future Democratic voters. But one of the things Biden also did, in addition to destroying all the programs we put in place to give us the most secure border, he overturned the Trump census rule, which means millions of people they release in sanctuary cities will be counted in the next census, which is going to result in what? More seats in the House for the Dems. So I truly believe they saw future political benefit from this. But you're exactly right. And I've said this. Why do I think he did it on purpose? Because Joe Biden was vice president under Barack Obama when he had those record removals. Alejandro Mayorkas was a deputy secretary under Obama when he had those removals. And we had families. We had thousands of families coming across the border every day. How did we stop it? We built family residential centers. We held them long enough to see a judge. 90% lost the case, 90%. So we put them on an airplane, sent them home, border numbers tanked. So both those men knew how we solved that crisis. When they came back in, as now the secretary and the president, what did they do? The complete opposite. They didn't detain, they released. They didn't make them see a judge, and they weren't removing them. So they did the complete opposite of what they knew worked under President Obama.
Wow. Let me ask you this, though, because you mentioned children on several of your answers already. And I know you mentioned you're trying to find children that were separated from their parents. How does that process work, actually? How do you go about the business of finding, children that have been separated from their parents?
Well, look, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've been honest from day one. That is going to be the hardest out of the three goals that I have. That is going to be the hardest, and for obvious reasons. 500,000 children, more than 500,000 children were smuggled in the country, separated from their parents, put in the hands of criminal cartels to be brought in this country legally. And, you and I, we leave our child in a car in the middle of summer, we'll get arrested. But these 500,000 children were put in the hands of criminal cartels, released into the country by the last administration. The last administration was concerned about one thing: optics. So the instructions to ORR, which is Division HHS, was to process release as quickly as you can, because if there's no overcrowding, we can say the border's secure, nothing to see here, right? Even the secretary of HHS, Becerra, he on stage several times, he was bragging how quickly they release these children to so-called sponsors.'s a problem: they didn't vet these sponsors appropriately. Under the Trump administration, we did DNA testing. We not only vetted the sponsor, we vetted everybody in that household to make sure there wasn't a child predator in that household, make sure there wasn't a gang member in that household. We took a lot of steps to make sure these children are going to be safe when they're sent to the sponsors. Under this administration, the whistleblowers at HHS has made it clear many of these sponsors weren't fingerprinted, many of them, they weren't run through record checks, and many of the identification they provided was not assured that it was legitimate identification. So here's the issue now. We got 300,000 children we need to find. And there's a way to find you and me, Stephen. We have a footprint. We have a digital footprint. We own homes, we own cars, we pay bills, we got loans, and we got utility bills, whatever. They can find us. But a child don't have that digital footprint, which means we got to use the digital footprint of the sponsors and what information they provided. And we know a lot of the information is fraudulent. So it's going to be a difficult job. I can tell you right now, we'll find some of these children, and not every one of these children are in harm's way. Many of them won't find they're with their parents, but many of them are not. Based on my 4 decades of doing this, many of these children are going to be in forced labor. We already found many in forced labor. Some are going to be in sexual slavery. And so we need to find these children and save them. But that's the hardest part about this job, because of the data that we have is not the best data in the world, but we're not going to give up. President Trump's committed, do everything we can to find these children.
Let me get back to you with this question, too, though. You're considered one of the masterminds of the first Trump administration's infamous zero tolerance policy, which led to the separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents in the eyes of many, at the very least. The idea led to the separation of more than, I think, 4,000 children from their parents, and some were lamenting that some of them were put in cages. How do you answer these questions? For those that don't know, how do you answer questions like that, like I just posed to you, in terms of 4,000 children being separated from their parents?
Absolutely. So where did zero tolerance come from? Zero tolerance came from this. 31% of women that make their journey get raped by the criminal cartels. Children were dying on that border every day. Dying. Either drowning in a river, dying making that journey. Children were sexually assaulted, and children were dying in the desert. They made that journey, and a lot of women and children not only died, many were sexually assaulted. So we said, look, how can we save lives? How can we stop the sexual assault of children? So we said, look, let's prosecute them, because it's a crime to enter this country illegally. So if we prosecute them and put them in jail, maybe the numbers go down, maybe less will come. And it worked. Zero tolerance, that the numbers of families putting themselves in harm's way and putting themselves in the hands of criminal cartels dropped significantly. However, the sad part about it, the unfortunate part about it, is that when you prosecute a parent and put them in jail, the child won't go with them. And I'll say this: I started as a police officer in New York. Police agencies across this country separate families 1,000 times a day across this country because the child doesn't go to jail with a parent. And I've said during my testimony, and one time I was testifying at Hill, when I was a cop in New York, When I went to domestic violence call and I arrested the father, I separated that family. Child can't go to jail with him. When I arrested a DUI and he had a child in the car, I separated that family. It's an unfortunate and saddest part of law enforcement. Families get separated when the parents get arrested. So we do let the families 1,000 times a day in this country with Americans, but they want a different set of rules for illegal aliens. But the whole intent of doing this was to save lives with less sexual assaults on women and children. That was the whole purpose for it. But they keep harping on that Trump's family separation policy. But and you're right, about 4,000. But they don't talk about the 500,000, 500,000 separations that this administration is responsible for, because they send a message to the whole world. If you're a child and you cross this country illegally, you're not going to be deported. We'll deliver you to the very same people who paid a criminal cartel to smuggle you into this country. So, you know, what we did was try to save lives and decrease sexual assaults. What they did was send a message to the whole world. Child can cross the border. We'll get them to the final destination at government expense and reward the people who paid the criminal cartels. And that's why the numbers exploded, because there's no consequence. We had a consequence. They didn't.
That's an incredibly compelling answer that you just gave. I can't refute it. No one should, as far as I'm concerned, sir. But I would ask you this, because whether it's optics or it's a reality, listening to what you said, how sensitive you are to these issues, what one would argue diametrically opposes that is when we see one story, and granted, it's one individual, but it's still a 10-year-old in Texas who's a U.S. citizen being deported to Mexico, you know, suffering from brain cancer. You've seen that story plastered all over the news wires over the last couple of days. How do you explain your mode of thinking and your explanation about why you do what you do and why you're committed to doing what you're doing, which is pretty damn close to irrefutable, I might add. But then we see a case like that happening. How do you juxtapose that?
Look, you and I are on the same page. Actually, I've been on travel the last couple of days. I saw that story on my way to work this morning. I read that story, and what did I do? I immediately contacted the office of the Board of Patrol and said, I want facts in this case. Because many times the facts are different from what you read in the media, but I've already inquired about it. What happened here? What's the ground truth here? So I'm looking into it. I read that story this morning. I know I'm a day behind, but I get hundreds of phone calls, hundreds of texts. I have a lot of meetings. I'm on an airplane all the time, but I've asked this morning because we want to make sure. Look, I've been honest from the beginning. We want to be transparent American people. If we screw up, we didn't know we screw up. If we do something, so I've already asked that question. I don't have the facts on it yet. I've asked for facts, ground truth on that, and I'll deal with it once I get the facts up on the ground from what actually happened. Because many times what you read in the media, they leave half the story out. Sometimes they don't, but I'm going to find out.
Well, I appreciate that answer. And that's very honest and stand up for you. Thank you for saying that. Are you saying that you don't know all the facts yet? And if you do find out that this 10-year-old child was indeed a United States citizen, that you will make sure that child is not deported?
I'll make sure I get all the facts and make a decision based on the facts. I can't tell you what I'm going to do yet. The facts could be 1,000 different ways, right? But are the parents a public safety threat? Are they national security threat? They can't be here. And so we got to find out what the facts are, but we'll make a decision that is the most humanitarian thing we can do.
Let me switch to sanctuary cities, because obviously I've seen you, and I shouldn't say this. It's actually bad for me to say this on camera, but I haven't minded you at all, you know, going at elected officials and law enforcement officials and letting them know that they were going to be accountable if they didn't follow the law. Didn't bother me at all to see that from you, but I am wondering, what are your future plans for sanctuary cities, and do you see a legal solution to sanctuary cities in this country?
I actually do. We're working on some things right now. I don't want to share it here on this podcast because it's law enforcement sensitive. We're working on some things now, but I can say this. Sanctuary cities are sanctuary for criminals. And we're going to hold them accountable. And Pam Bondi, now that she's the Attorney General, she's already filed lawsuits. And we're going to continue filing lawsuits because we think knowingly releasing a public safety threat back into the public is just dumb. There's no reason for that. When you release a public safety threat back in the public, it puts our officers at great risk, because rather than arresting somebody in the safety and security of county jail, now we got to go to the neighborhood and find them, which is dangerous for the officer, dangerous for the alien, because anything can happen on a street arrest, and it's certainly dangerous for the community. So we want to make, in sanctuary cities, they don't understand, they're hurting themselves, because when you don't give us access to the bad guy locked in a jail cell, which is safe for everybody, you release them to the community, you're going to get exactly what you don't want. You're going to put the public at greater risk of crime, because many will commit another crime. And what you're going to force ICE in the community, and we'll find the bad guy. But when we find him, he's probably with others that aren't a criminal threat, but they're in the country illegally. Well, they're going to go too, because we're not going to turn our back on illegal alien. Once we find it, we're going to let ICE do their job and enforce immigration law. So what you get being a sanctuary city is exactly what you don't want. More officers in the community and more collateral arrests, because we found them while we're looking for the bad guy. So we want the sanctuary cities to do one thing. Let us end the jail. Let us talk to the person that you locked in a jail cell, because obviously the public safety threat. Give us access to that person. It's safer for everybody. It's the right thing to do. And the message from sanctuary cities is this, which is a bunch of crap. Well, we're a sanctuary city. We're welcoming jurisdiction because we want illegal aliens to feel safe when they want to report crimes or they're victim of crime, to come to us for help without the fear we're working with ICE. That is so false, because number one, we don't want to talk to the victim witness. We want to talk to the guy you locked in a jail cell. And if you go talk to the victim witness and ask him, do you want the bad guy released back in your neighborhood? The victim and witness don't want him back either. So let us get access to the person locked in that taxpayer-funded jail to help drive crime down the neighborhood and make it safe for officers, alien in the community. It just makes sense to me as a career cop. I don't understand why any elected official whose number one responsibility is protection of their community, why would you not work with us to remove a child rapist from the community rather than release them back in the community?
I got about 3 more questions for you, because I know your time is precious, and I really appreciate you giving me this time. Prior to the election, you pledged to conduct the largest deportation in American history. Now, there's more than 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. Where do we stand today in terms of identifying those individuals and deporting them out of the country?
Great question, because I read a media story this morning. We're deporting less people than Joe Biden. Yeah, because Joe Biden had millions of people coming across the border every year, and a lot of border patrols are removing a lot of them. So you can't compare the administration. It isn't how many removed. It's number one, how many did you release into the country illegally? And Biden administration is in the millions. And the more important question is, how many interior arrests, people in the interior country, did you arrest? If you look at those numbers, we're about 3 times higher than Joe Biden was during the same time period. We got about 36,000 arrests so far, vast majority of criminals, because President Trump has promised American people on this mass deportation operation, the worst first, the criminals first, because they're the biggest danger to our communities. National security threats, public safety threats, that's what we're concentrating on. But that aperture will open to the 1.4 million that had due process at great taxpayer expense, were ordered removed, but instead of leaving, they became a fugitive. That aperture will open up. So you can see the rest increased in the very near future. But the problem is sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are making us less efficient. Well, rather than one agent arresting one bad guy in the jail, now we got to send a whole team into the neighborhood for officer safety reasons to find somebody that don't want to be found. So that's slowing us up. But what we'll do, we'll double the man force of sanctuary cities. We'll double the teams. We're not going to be stopped. And we'll overcome all the roadblocks we're putting in, but we're going to get it done.
But you're talking about in Guantanamo Bay, for example, there's tens of thousands of available space, but there are millions of immigrants in this country illegally. So I'm saying, if you're successful from a deportation standpoint in terms of locating who those individuals are, there's only but so much room in Guantanamo Bay. Where else are they going to go? What are you going to do with them?
Another great question. I've been on media for the last 2 weeks. Congress needs to fund this operation. We need money, because you're right. Every illegal alien we arrest, we need a bed for. Our bed's almost full right now. So we need money so we can do what the American people voted for. The number one issue was illegal immigration, removing criminal aliens. So Congress needs to come and give us the funding to do this. We need to buy more beds. We need to have more out of country planes. We need more contracts to have more contract people come in and do the work that doesn't require law enforcement that law enforcement's currently doing. So you're exactly right. Congress needs to come through. I'm hoping they sign a bill today or hopefully tonight. We need a bill right now, but we need reconciliation. We need money to be successful, because the more money we have, the more successful we're going to be.
I got to admit, Mr. Homan, that should be the easiest part of your job. I mean, the president has all 3 branches of government in his favor. I mean, the GOP has that, the White House, the Senate, the House. I mean, it shouldn't be difficult at this particular moment in time for them to give you what you want, since they assigned you to do this job. But I want to transition real quick to undocumented workers. So a lot of people argue, they've had a massive economic benefit. They've been a massive economic benefit to this country. They pay taxes, are important to the workforce, are less violent than some naturalized citizens. That's the things that you keep hearing people say. What role does that play in your thinking when it comes to issues of deportation?
Look, if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. It's not okay to be here illegally. But as you know, we're prioritizing worst of the worst fugitives. And here's the issue. I'll use one example, and this is a true example. I had a new roof put on my house 2 years ago. I had to call 6 companies before I got a company that guaranteed me a legal workforce. And one person that showed up was a father and son. Father and son used to have 20 United States citizen employees. But him and his son came by and said, can I just repair the roof? Do we need to replace the roof? Because him and his son can't replace the whole roof. Here's a story he told me. He had to fire 20 U.S. citizen employees because he was competing against all these companies that had illegal aliens paying them, $7 an hour to get on the roof. Well, he was paying U.S. citizens $20 to get on the roof. People need to understand that no one hires an illegal alien on the goodness of their hearts. The hireman can pay them less, work them further, work them harder, and undercut their competition as U.S. citizen employees. Now, I'll say this: if we need that type of staff to come to this country and work, then it's up to Congress to make the changes. But we can't condone hiring illegal aliens because that's what drives everything else. When you overwhelm the border patrol with what people call innocent immigration, just people coming here for a better life, people coming for a job. But what they need to understand, there's an ugly underbelly of that, because when you overwhelm the border patrol, you tie border patrol up with what they call innocent immigration, it overwhelms the border patrol, which means there's less agents on the border to arrest people smuggling fentanyl. There's less people, agents on the border to stop the sex trafficking. What happened to Joe Biden? Joe Biden caused such a huge surge in illegal immigration. 70% of agents were pulled off the line to deal with this humanitarian crisis and deal with this so-called innocent illegal immigration. And when they did that, what happened, Steve? 600% increase in sex trafficking. We got 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. We got a record number of people on terrorist watch across the border. So we got to do this legally. There are millions of people standing in line right now, taking their tests, paying their fees, doing the background investigation, come to the country the right way. They're sitting in the back seat because CIS is overwhelmed with fraudulent asylum claims. So I get it. If we need a workforce, need more workforce in the country, then we create a legal program. They can come with a visa, so they don't have to pay a criminal cartel. They don't have to give their whole life savings to put themselves at risk for the criminal cartel and swim across the river and drown. So Congress needs to do some work, but we can't condone illegal immigration. We can't condone go ahead and enter the country legally, and we're not going to be looking for it. We got to send the message to the whole world. There's a set of rules. There's a right way and a wrong way to come to the greatest nation on earth. Let's do things the right way. I got to look at legislative branch Congress to do that. But in the meantime, we can't okay illegal immigration because it's going to result in more people dying, more women being raped, more cartels, making more money to come to flood this country with poisonous fentanyl.
Very last question to you, sir. I give you the floor. You want America to know what about ICE right now, today, and moving forward?
Here's why I'm sick and tired of reading stories that ICE is going to raid your school. They're going to raid your churches. They're doing neighborhood sweeps. People need to understand everybody that ICE arrests is based on a targeted enforcement operation, which means they know who they're going to arrest. They have a pretty good idea where they're going. They have to draw up an operational plan. So it's not neighborhood sweeps. We're not going through neighborhoods looking for people different than us. And when we got away with the sense of location policy, we ended it. Why? Because we have to go to a high school and arrest an MS-13 member we know is there right now. He's a public safety threat. We need to go in that high school along with the local authorities and arrest that public safety threat. Doesn't mean we're going to raid the school. I mean, we're going to arrest the bad guy that's in the high school, the same as every other federal law enforcement agency, state law enforcement agency, local. They all do it. And ICE should not have a different set of rules. We'll go into schools to arrest a public safety threat, significant public safety threat. Churches, we'll never raid a church, but if we know there's a national security threat we know is in a church right now that we're looking for, we know he's sitting there right now, we'll go and arrest that person. Doesn't mean we're raiding schools. Doesn't mean we're raiding churches. We're not raiding hospitals, which I see lots of left media saying it. They're scaring the immigrant community. I want people to go to school. We want people to go see their doctor and go to hospital, go to church. We got to straighten that narrative out. It's a left that are putting fear in the immigrant community. We are basing our operations right now on the worst of the worst criminals. So go to church, go get your medical care, send your children to school. We're not raiding those places. We're doing the same thing every law enforcement agency does. It's not sweeps, target enforcement operation, a lot of planning. We do this carefully. The agents are very professional. So I just wish the left would just State the truth on what we're exactly doing. Look at the data. As I just said, 36,000 arrests, vast majority of criminals. We're doing exactly what President Trump said we would do, and that I said we would do. We're concentrating on worse first.
There's no left or right here. I'm center. I care about the damn truth. And as far as I'm concerned, I want you to know, first of all, you're welcome back on the show anytime. I would love to have you back on to get in more intensive conversations about this, even more so than we just did over this last 20 plus minutes. I thank you for your time, and please feel free. Anytime you've got something to say and you want to come back and you want to have a conversation, please know that you're welcome to come back on the show, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
All right. The one and only Tom Homan, a.k.a. the Border Czar. He oversees the southern border, the northern border, all maritime, and, of course, aviation security. Mr. Tom Homan right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Really, really happy that he came on. Coming up, he's the greatest shooter God ever created, and last night Steph Curry did something we may never see again. I'll get into that and respond to your tweets. All that up next to close out the show right here with your boy Stephen A. Smith. Don't go away. What's up, everybody? Stephen A. Smith here. Recently, we made news because the great Bill O'Reilly announced a tour that's coming nearest you in the very, very near future. Get your tickets now for this. It's called 3 Americans, live March 30th at Live Nation's Flag Star at the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. Don't miss the very first show as myself, Chris Cuomo, and yes, that man, Bill O'Reilly, take our different ideas, our different backgrounds, our different beliefs across the country to demonstrate that respectful, meaningful, and even fun conversation. Those are the things that make America as great as it should be. The show will be spirited, unscripted, and all 3 of us will let it fly as we discuss the topics everyone is thinking about these days. There'll also be questions from the audience. We're not running. Tickets are officially on sale now with pre-sale code USA at 3americanslive.com. VIP packages are available with the opportunity to meet and take photos with myself and both those fellas. That's 3 Americans, live March 30th at the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. Additional dates and cities to be announced. Don't miss it. Trust me, you'll get a kick out of it. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. I want to get into the NBA and the history we saw last night in San Francisco. That's where the one and only Steph Curry. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. No, I'm not a singer. But he did turn 37 years of age today. And the night before, as in last night, he made his 4,000th three-point shot. So let's put this milestone into its proper perspective, please. You may recall that Steph broke the NBA's all-time three-point shooting record 3 years ago when he passed Ray Allen's mark of 2,973 back in December of 2021. Steph has since made more than 1,000 threes, and he's still going. Ladies and gentlemen, he just turned 37 today, as I started off. 3 seasons ago, he had reached the 3,000 career mark on three-pointers. He's averaging 11.2 three-point attempts per game this year, making 4.4 three-pointers per game, right? And those attempts are second to LaMelo Ball. And also, Steph is shooting a hair under 40% from 3 for the season. Some people have said the real question is, can Steph Curry reach 5,000 three-pointers? Let's put this in its proper perspective first, okay? Do y'all understand that right now, Steph Curry is 873. He has 873 more three-pointers than any player in NBA history. James Harden second. You see his resume right there. 4-time champion, 2-time MVP, 10-time All-Star, All-NBA, first team 4 times, 11-time NBA All-Star, 2 All-Star Game MVPs, 2-time NBA scoring champion, NBA 75th anniversary team, Olympic gold medalist in 2024. The resume is impeccable. It's otherworldly. We all know this, okay? But with 873 more three-pointers than any player in NBA history, second is James Harden. Let's not forget that. His three-point percentage shooting, 42.4%, third all-time with a minimum of 2,500 attempts. Free throw percentage shooting, 91.1%. That's the best in NBA history. And his true shooting percentage is 8th all-time at 62.5%. The brother is on another level. He's one of 7 players in NBA history with at least 4 championships and 2 league MVP awards. Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Tim Duncan, and LeBron James are the other 6. All right? That's who we're talking about when we talk about Steph Curry. So when I bring all of that up to you and I throw out that resume, I have a very, very, very simple question. A, does he belong in the GOAT conversation? Yes, that's not saying he's the GOAT. That means when you mention the GOAT or you have a conversation about the GOAT, you do need to consider the greatest shooter God has ever created, who's a 4-time champion and a 2-time league MVP, an NBA Finals MVP, a gold medalist. You kind of need to think about these things. And one of the things that was sacrilegious in a lot of people's eyes is when I brought up, is he the greatest point guard ever? Now, my man Eddie Johnson on NBA radio and others was like, that's just sacrilegious. Magic Johnson is the greatest point guard we've ever seen. John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, Jason Kidd, Gary Payton, and others, Chris Paul, the point guard himself, CP3, they're all up there. I'm not talking about quintessential prototypical point guards. That's not what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. I'm saying if you look at Magic Johnson, let's take into account Magic Johnson, who's five championships. Okay, 5 championships. 9 NBA Finals appearances. We get that part, right? Here's what I want y'all to think about. I'm not talking quintessential prototypical point guard that's setting up others. That's not what I mean with Steph Curry. I'm talking about impact on an offense. Magic Johnson, 6'9", with 3 eyes, for crying out loud. 1 in the back of his head, 2 in the front. Okay? With a 6th sense about him. Just a sublime point guard. Affected the game in a myriad of ways that led to championships. Well, what the hell has Steph Curry done? Steph Curry has had people in the hospital receiving oxygen because, as J.R. Smith once told, Matthew Dellavedova almost died chasing Steph Curry around all game long. Every defense has to keep its collective head on a swivel, trying to find where he is at all times because he can pull up from anywhere. His conditioning is top-notch compared to anybody. At age 36, he just dropped 56 a couple of weeks ago. He's been averaging over 30 since Jimmy Butler arrived. And by the way, with all of that being said, he is the only player in NBA history that you literally have to man up and guard the second he steps past half court. That is how lethal the great Steph Curry is and has been. It is who he is. He's that phenomenal. He's that great. So again, Magic Johnson doing what he does, impact, compared to Steph Curry doing what he does, impact. What would you rather have? It's a legitimate question. LeBron James, my number 2 all time. MJ, my number 1, because MJ at his best, I believe, is the greatest I've ever seen in my life. And oh, by the way, let's not even bring Steph Curry into the category of him when it comes to defense. LeBron shows you what he can do, but he doesn't do it often enough defensively throughout his career, which is another reason I got him number 2. But he's still number 2 because we see what the Lakers look like without LeBron James at age 40 in his 22nd season. No doubt about it. And needless to say, I'm just showing my professionalism. I'm obviously in no mood to show him any kind of love. But we got to be honest. I'm never going to lie. The man is that phenomenal. Got him number 2 all time. But Shaq is right. We got to look at Steph Curry a little differently, y'all. It can't just be, well, he's just a great shooter, and that's all there is. His movement without the basketball, his ball handling skills, his ability to create his own shot off the dribble from 10, 20, 30, 40, damn it, sometimes 50 and 60 feet. He's that great. He's that spectacular. We got to give it to him. And when we got to give it to him on that level, we got to ask ourselves, where do you put him? If we're going to talk about Kobe top 5, and we're going to talk about the Tim Duncans of the world top 5, how would he summarily dismiss the notion of Steph Curry being in that conversation? Definitely top 10. And then if you're going to say top 10, who do you take out of it? Who do you take out? Do you take out Duncan? Take out Bird? You take out Kobe? Who do you take out? Who you going to take out? We got to ask ourselves these questions, mind you. We got to ask ourselves these questions. All I'm saying is he warrants a legitimate discussion because it's undeniable that he now belongs in the conversation. If we're able to call him the greatest shooter God has ever created, if you're going to be in the GOAT conversation, don't you have to be the GOAT in something? He's the GOAT when it comes to shooting. I know about the resume of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I know about the 11 championships in 13 years from Bill Russell. I know about how rules had to be changed because of the greatness of Wilt Chamberlain, even though he only had 2 titles. I know Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward that ever lived. Giannis, at some point, is going to belong in the conversation in a lot of people's eyes. Steph Curry, man, it's just special. Salute on his 37th birthday. We can give him nothing but praise. He is that phenomenal. He truly, truly is. Happy birthday, my brother, and congratulations to you. Now let's get to some of the tweets before I get on out of here for the day. Okay, so here we got this here. These people come up with this stuff. I just don't understand it. Captain America versus Red Hulk. I'm going to pick Red Hulk, okay? Captain America, I have mad love for you, but damn it, that's the Hulk right there. Thor versus Loki. Of course, I'm going to go with Thor. Spider-Man versus Venom. You know, Venom with them teeth, those spider webs ain't going to hold him, man. I can't see that. I'm going to go with Venom on that one. And then Iron Man versus Thanos. Thanos is superhuman. I'm going to go with him, okay? So then we go from there. So we got Red Hulk, Thor, Venom, and Thanos. I'm going to pick Thanos over Venom. I'm going to pick Thor over the Red Hulk because Red Hulk couldn't even lift his hammer. Couldn't even lift the hammer. I'm going to go with that, right? After I do that, so now we got with Thor going up against Thanos. Yo, y'all, Thor couldn't mess with Thanos until he had help. I'm going to go with Thanos. Remember when Thanos beat up the Hulk was throwing him around and they were like, just wait for it because Thanos was just toying with him, looking at the shots, looking at all the effort he was put forth, acting like he was hurting them. Then he just beat him up. Remember when he choked and strangled Loki? Remember when Thor was helpless but to watch? Thanos is the dude to go to. It took all of them to stop him. So I'm going to go with Thanos. That's the first tweet. What you got next? At Big Orange Punch, right? Stephen A. Smith, Dewey or Brick, fight to the death. Well, I'm going to go with Brick because that's the name of my soap opera character on General Hospital. We're going to go with that. That's all. I don't even need to look at those two. Anybody that's got the name Brick is who I'm going to favor. Watch General Hospital weekdays on Channel 7, okay? 2 o'clock in some markets, 3 o'clock in others. But with General Hospital, soap opera, trust me, you'll love it. Next tweet, last tweet, what you got? At Sour Patch Kids X. Now, I love that because I love me some Sour Patch, and I'm a kid, even though I'm 57. Stephen A. Smith, if you could bring back any elite team from 2000 to 2024, which team would it be and why? That's a hard one because for me, I loved Shaq and Kobe and the crew in L.A. at the beginning of the century. I loved LeBron with D. Wade and those boys in Miami. You know? I got to say that because it was, Miami is just a special, special place. And it was all because LeBron elected to go there and LeBron and D. Wade and those boys were in Miami. Those are some of the best years of my life. I just want to say that. Some of the best years of my life. I'm reminiscing. Como está? Como está? That's number 2. Having said that, believe it or not, though, that first year, shouldn't say the first year, but when KD arrived in Golden State, and KD was with the Splash Brothers, that was special. I can't front. That was special. It's hard, man. But I'm going to say L.A. with Kobe and Shaq and the crew. Because they made, I mean, when KD went to Golden State, it flipped so dramatically the balance of power. It didn't even make no sense to watch. Okay? And they were very entertaining with their sniper-like tendencies or whatever, but damn it, it was almost unfair. But when I watched the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq and Orion and Shaw and Derek Fisher and the crew, let me tell y'all something. I was in Sacramento for that Game 7 for their second championship. When they had Mike Bibby and C. Webb and Vlade Divac and all those cats, I was there. It's 23 years later, y'all. It's top 2 or 3 of one of the greatest basketball environments I've ever experienced in my life. When I was in Sacramento for that Game 7, it was spectacular. And the series was big time too. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hope y'all enjoyed it. And thanks again to Mr. Tom Homan for coming on the show. The Borders are for coming on the Stephen A. Smith Show. He didn't have to do that, ladies and gentlemen. He's a busy man with a busy schedule. He don't have time to play games. He's on a mission. But he took time to come on this show. And I really, really appreciate it. So thank you again to Mr. Tom Homan for taking time out of his very busy schedule to join the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hope y'all enjoyed the show and hope y'all enjoy an absolutely wonderful and fruitful week. And be blessed, be safe. Until Monday, I'll see y'all. Peace and love, everybody.